Put the power back in your hands. This is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
Welcome to Behind the Law. Great show lined up for you today. Welcome in my co-host, as always, the beautiful Michaela Nichols. Hello, Michaela. How are you?
Great.
Let's get it right out in the open. Black belt, brown shoes.
Tried.
Okay, so I was wearing a different wardrobe before the show. It required a black belt. I forgot to bring a brown one, but I don't need you talking trash during the show. I want to get it out there in the open.
You know what that sounds like?
What?
A PP, personal problem.
Is that what the kids call it these days?
That's what the kids call it.
Well, here's what's coming up today. Attorney Jose Rivas joins us. Here's why I think it's interesting. And we always hear about immigration and immigration reform and the immigration problem we have, but I've always been fascinated as to when people do come across the border and they haven't done it properly, when they get picked up, what happens to them? What happens to them criminally once they actually get picked up? How does that process work? Fascinating stuff. Jose's great at that. I look forward to it. And then in the second part of the show today, I'm going to get you updated on the real estate market because you hear about it pulling back a little bit. Does that mean another foreclosure crisis is right around the corner? You will not want to miss it. Michaela Nichols, are you ready?
I am.
Quick timeout. When we return, attorney Jose Rivas on the immigration and criminal situation in this country as Behind the Law continues. Having debt can leave you feeling helpless. I'm attorney Justin Clark. Filing for bankruptcy may give you the power to lower or even eliminate the payments that have you living paycheck to paycheck. Call me now for a free consultation or visit youhavepower.com and take back control of your life. Does student loan debt have you spinning out of control? You are not helpless. At Attorneys Justin Clark and Associates, our goal is to lower or even eliminate your monthly payments. Call me today or visit youhavepower.com and take back control of your financial life. Welcome back to the show. Very pleased to be joined by our good friend Jose Rivas, the Rivas Law Firm. Jose, how are you, buddy?
Doing great.
I like your story a lot. Rollins College, FAMU Law. I mean, you're a local guy around here, a local attorney. How does that change your career in some ways, knowing this community so well?
Well, I'm involved in different things actually, and I came when I was 7 years old from Cuba, and I went to high school here. I also went to Rollins College, and I've been able to interact in the community. I have several ventures as well too that I'm involved with, so yeah. I get the opportunity to interact with the community and be part of it, which is great.
I always love the stories about someone coming from another country and coming here to find the American dream, so to speak. Obviously a huge political debate now. We can have that debate on the radio show or some other forum. But it's pretty clear that we do have people coming in who don't go through the regular immigration process, and they're here, I guess, technically illegally at the time. You handle a lot of immigration. You also handle criminal. How does immigration and criminal law, how do those two work together?
Well, the problem that we have is that there's people who are driving, for example, without a driver's license. It's illegal, but certainly it's not as serious as other kinds of felony cases. So what happens is they'll get arrested, they will go to the jail. Some of them have a bond. They will pay the bond, but what happens is they will have an immigration hold. So once you pay the bond, the immigration will come. They have 48 hours to pick you up. They will pick them up, take them into immigration custody, and what happens from there is that most of them, they will get deported, but the reality is that they didn't have their day in court. They didn't have the opportunity. You know, the Constitution says that there's a presumption of innocence that carries over until you're found guilty. So therefore, here you're in custody, you get deported, but you didn't have your day in court to be able, you know, to show your innocence, so to speak.
Let's say that I'm here illegally, okay, and I have a wife or a girlfriend, and they get mad at me, and they call the local authorities and say, "Oh, this guy is here illegally." Will the police officers actually go investigate this? Is that something they're going to do, or is it only going to happen if I have contact with the police?
Right. Usually not here in Florida.
Yeah.
What happens usually is you have to get arrested or you have to go to jail, and then at that point, if you're a red flag, let's say you've been deported in the past, now that and you're here in custody again, they could charge you federally by re-entry. It's called a re-entry, illegal re-entry again. Now that's a federal charge, and that does carry, you know, time. But most of the time is you have to have some kind of contact, or at least be arrested and be processed through the jail in order to have an immigration hold.
Wow. So let's say I get pulled over for speeding, like you had talked about. So it's literally just for speeding. and they run me and they realize I'm here illegally, am I going to get taken to jail?
No,
No?
speeding is a civil offense. It's not a criminal offense, so you don't get processed through the jail. Usually they should just give you, but again, if they find anything else in the car or it leads to something else, then that's
Yeah.
a whole different story.
You've seen people, obviously, who are here illegally, who probably risk their life to get here, and then they get caught up in, it's probably even a minor crime at times. How stressful is that for someone who's here illegally, knowing that there's a solid chance they're going to get sent back home?
It is. I mean, it disrupts their life. I've had clients that have been here for 10 or 15 years, don't have any legal status. They're driving to work, don't have any kind of criminal history, and they get arrested. It's really at the discretion of the officer. The officer could give them a citation to go to court, but some officers will arrest them, which they can for a misdemeanor, and you go to jail and you pay the $500 bond, and here you are in 48 hours. Immigration is picking you up, so they're deporting you. So it becomes, turns your whole life around. They have kids, they have family here, they have businesses, so it really turns your life upside down.
And take me through this process one more time. So let's say that I do have a contact with a police officer. They determine I'm committing some sort of crime. I'm here illegally. So from that point forward, what happens? They're going to take me to jail, and then what happens from there?
Well, it's at the discretion of the officer to take you to jail for a misdemeanor. If they do take you to jail, once you're being processed at the jail, they have certain, from the FBI and certain databases, and if you get a red flag, they will put an immigration hold. What that means is that once you're released from the county jail, you fulfill all the requirements, you pay the bond. Now they will give immigration 48 hours to come pick you up. If they don't pick you up within 48 hours, you walk out.
They let you right out.
Exactly, you're right out. But if they pick you up, then immigration will take you. And now I've had cases, for example, in other felony cases where immigration will pick you up, and then now the judges here the court system will do a warrant, failure to appear, although it's not a willful. You can't come to court if you're in immigration custody. So, and then they leave, and then the warrant stays on forever. If they ever return, they'll get picked up at the border, or even if they want to return legally, they can't fix their papers because there's an outstanding warrant for them.
So during that 48-hour period, how likely is it that immigration's going to show up and going to pick me up?
Well, without saying specifically, there are certain counties that are a little more strict.
Is that right?
We can talk about Orange County, we can talk about Seminole, and we can talk about Polk County. But it all depends on the relationship that the immigration has. The jail needs to call them up and say, hey, you need to get here. You got 48 hours. So it all depends. Orange County, it's not as strict as other counties. But again, it also depends on the type of crime. If we have some crimes that are first degree or second degree felonies, they'll put a little more attention to that.
Right. Interesting. It's a scary thing going through, I imagine, but that's what you do. You're here to represent individuals who have been charged with a crime or have some sort of immigration hold. What is it like, not just for the individual, but for the family? Because I imagine when they come in to see you, they're scared. The wife is scared. The kids are scared. What is it like when you're charged with a serious crime?
It's very stressful. The family calls, very stressful. Most of them, the individual is in custody. They're the main provider for the household, and they don't have the resources. Now you need an immigration attorney to be able to have a bond hearing over an immigration so they can be released. And again, it's very stressful for the family. I mean, most of my clients, they've been here for a long time, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Their driver license expired, and with the changes of the law, they weren't able to renew their driver's license, and that becomes an issue, in our community today. Most of them, they're hardworking people. There's a little bit of everything, but most of them, they're hardworking people. They're trying to get to work.
My goodness.
So when that happens, I guess I'm a little confused. So when you get deported, do they literally just send you back home, like no ifs, ands, or buts?
Right. They'll put a deportation order where you cannot return, let's say, approximately for 10 years.
Wow.
On many occasions, they will come back in again. Now, if you're picked up on the border again, or for some reason you're picked up, somewhere in the feds, as we know, immigration is a federal institution, the feds can charge you with an illegal reentry. Now you have a federal charge, which typically you could do anywhere from 10 months to about 2 years in federal prison.
And I think 1 month is too long in prison for me, I don't think I'd do so well.
I think one day is too long for me, personally.
I would do better than you, but probably worse than a lot of people. Let me tell you something. If you know anyone who is facing immigration issues, facing any deportation issues, call the phone number on the screen right now. I will connect you with Jose immediately. They are fantastic when it comes to immigration, fantastic when it comes to dealing with the criminal aspect of immigration as well. It's 321-282-1055. This is not something that you want to be stressed out about all the time. There are things that you can do. There are steps you can take to alleviate some of the stress that you have about being here illegally, or a family member being here illegally. Jose will take excellent care of you. And moving aside from the immigration part of it a little bit, just when it comes to criminal charges, sometimes I think we get confused. So when someone's charged with a crime, normally they put a bond. And you say, oh, it's a $10,000 bond, $20,000 bond. does that mean they have to go in and pay the $10,000 or $20,000, or is there another process for doing that?
Whenever there's a bond amount issued by the court, you can pay the full amount cash into the court registry, and you will get that back when the case is over. Or you can use a bondsman. The bondsman will charge you at 10% by law. They cannot charge you any more than 10% or $100 minimum per count.
Yeah.
And you can pay the 10%. That's the premium that the bondsman makes, and to secure that you do come back, to court. But again, if you do have a failure to appear, you don't show up, or if you don't have an attorney that can waive your presence, then at that point you will forfeit the bond and you lose the money that you paid.
Is that right? So once the case is over, if I pay cash, am I going to get everything back no matter what?
You do get it back. The thing is that sometimes, for example, for a DUI, there's an approximately $1,200 to $1,500 in fines. The court will take their money before you get your money back.
All right,
and we think that's the way it works. So a lot of times when it's a big bond, I do suggest that they use a bondsman. There's a 10%. Yeah. It's a premium. You don't have all that money set there again, for a long period of time.
What happens if you don't pay the bond?
Well, if you don't pay the bond, you stay in custody, and then what happens is usually the state has 30 days to file what we call the information, which is the formal charges. And we've seen this at sometimes. Here's the other issue with immigration, that they'll go and they'll pay a bond, a $5,000 bond. The family will lose that bond if immigration picks them up.
Really?
So a lot of times I tell them, you know what, leave him here, let's wait 30 days, if the state does not file the formal charges within the 30 days, then immigration picks them up. At least you didn't lose that additional money.
Exactly. So if you're a judge, how do I determine what bond to put on someone?
Usually everybody that's arrested, if you don't pay bond within 24 hours immediately, you will go in front of a judge within 24 hours by law. It's called initial appearance. And at the jail, and actually this is public, there's a link and you can log in and you can see it. The judge at that point will determine if there's probable cause. Probable cause means there's just enough for an arrest, which is a lot lower than beyond a reasonable doubt. And at that point, what happens is the judge will issue a bond. Each county have a bond schedule, like a tablet, and say X amount. There's certain things you're not eligible to for a bond, and those are usually cases, crimes that are punishable by life, and what we call capital and first-degree felony. Those require special hearing as well, but those are like first-degree murder cases and some other kind of crimes, very serious crimes.
Let's say I get arrested for DUI, 10 p.m., whatever. What's the quickest I can really get out of jail?
Well, the reality is they're going to let you sit there for 8 hours till you sober out.
Is that right?
Regardless of whether you're 0.07, and you could have a 000. You know, if you're under the influence of drugs and there's no alcohol, you're going to sit there for 8 hours. So by the time they process, you get your in. So you're in for at least a good 10 to 12 hours before you're out again.
Now, domestic violence, obviously a major problem that we see throughout the country, probably throughout the universe at this point. But domestic violence, don't they keep you in there longer before you have a hearing as opposed to other cases, or no?
Domestic violence, because of the, actually it started because of the O.J. Simpson case many years back. What happens is you have to go in front of a judge. You're not entitled to a bond originally. What happens, you will go in front of the judge the following day, and the judge will set what we call the conditions of pretrial release, which means that you cannot return to the home. Now again, I do over 300 of these cases a year. Usually the alleged victim will contact us and say, hey, there was a mistake, I didn't want him to go to jail, or the other way around. I've had them in both ways. If you're there, if the alleged victim is there at the hearing, then at that point we can ask the judge to allow you to have from no contact to no hostile contact, which means that you can return home, you can have contact with the children. But then this also ties a lot into the immigration issue with the domestic violence. A lot of times there are certain reliefs with immigration that if you're a victim of domestic violence, you can get papers legally.
Right.
So that's another subject for another day. But it's called Huawei. Yes. So if you're a victim of domestic violence, you can actually apply for special relief for immigration, so you can get legal status. So is there a motive there to, to exaggerate or create something? I mean, I've seen cases where there's cameras inside the house and the other party they didn't even know for a reason or the other, and that evidence gets used for immigration. So.
It's such a touchy subject, of course, because we want to protect everyone, men and women, from domestic violence, but you've seen certainly instances of someone using it as a leverage to claim someone committed domestic violence upon them when later on it turns out nothing happened at all.
That's correct. I mean, the same thing with injunctions. We all hear about, protective injunctions. I've had a case 2 weeks ago where the lady filed an injunction against this individual, and she's knocking on his door the night before the hearing at 2 o'clock in the morning. We have her on camera.
Is that right?
So
unbelievable. If you have any questions whatsoever about immigration or criminal law, Jose Rivas, the Rivas Law Firm, will talk to you literally right now. The phone number on the screen, 321-282-1055. Jose, we have a lot of mutual friends. Nice to actually meet you in person today. Everyone raves about you. What a pleasure.
Thank you for having me here.
Here's what we're going to do. Quick break. When we return, you've heard the real estate market is booming. We've all heard that. You lived through the foreclosure process with me a decade ago. When this market corrects, Will we have another foreclosure crisis? It's just ahead on Behind the Law.